In early 1940, Europe was technically at war, but strangely silent. Soldiers waited behind borders. Civilians listened to radios for news that never came. Yet behind closed doors, Allied leaders were preparing a plan so dangerous that if executed, it could have rewritten the entire course of World War II. The target was not Germany. The enemy was not officially an enemy at all. It was oil. After Germany invaded Poland in September 1939, Britain and France declared war, but through the winter of 1939 and into early 1940, almost no major fighting occurred in Western Europe. This period became known as the Phony War. Publicly, the conflict seemed frozen. Privately, Allied leaders were running out of time. Germany's military power depended on fuel. Tanks, aircraft, and mechanized divisions consumed enormous quantities of oil. Germany did not have enough of its own. Without imports, its war machine would slow and eventually stop. By late 1939, British and French intelligence had confirmed a troubling reality. A significant portion of Germany's oil supply was coming from the Soviet Union. In August 1939, Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union signed the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. To the world, it appeared to be a simple non-aggression treaty, but buried within it were secret economic agreements. The Soviet Union agreed to supply Germany with oil, grain, and raw materials. By the winter of 1939, these shipments were actively sustaining Germany's ability to wage war. The Soviet Union was officially neutral, but its oil was keeping Germany alive. By December 1939, Allied leaders in London and Paris began considering an unthinkable solution. If Germany could not be defeated directly, perhaps its fuel source could be destroyed, not by blockade, not by diplomacy, but by fire. The focus turned to the Caucasus region of the Soviet Union. There, near the Caspian Sea, lay the most important oil fields in the country. Baku alone produced the majority of Soviet oil. The infrastructure was concentrated, exposed, and dangerously flammable. In late December 1939, British and French planners began discussing direct air attacks on these oil fields. The proposal was extreme. It meant bombing a nation they were not at war with, but desperation was growing. In January 1940, the idea became a formal military plan. It would later be known as Operation Pike. Operation Pike was designed as a strategic air campaign aimed at destroying Soviet oil production at its source. The primary targets were the oil refineries, storage tanks, pipelines, and port facilities at Baku, Grozny, and Batumi. These were not symbolic targets. They were the beating heart of Soviet industry. The objective was not precision, it was devastation. Planners believed that incendiary bombs could ignite massive fires that would burn uncontrollably for weeks or even months. Oil tanks, once lit, would spread flames across entire industrial zones. British estimates suggested that Soviet oil production could be reduced by as much as 80 to 90% in the opening phase. By February 1940, Operation Pike moved from planning to preparation. Aircraft would not fly from Europe. Instead, bombers were to operate from the Middle East. British-controlled Iraq and French-mandated Syria were chosen as forward bases. From there, long-range bombers could reach the Caucasus oil fields in a single mission. This decision revealed how serious the plan had become. Reconnaissance was essential. In March 1940, Allied aircraft secretly flew over Soviet territory, photographing oil installations around Baku. These missions violated Soviet airspace and confirmed what planners feared and hoped. The oil facilities were incredibly vulnerable. The Soviet Union noticed. By late March 1940, Soviet air defenses in the Caucasus were strengthened. Fighter squadrons were repositioned. Anti-aircraft guns were installed near key oil sites. Facilities were camouflaged where possible. Moscow knew something was wrong, but did not yet know how close it was to disaster. By early April 1940, Operation Pike was nearing execution readiness. Bombing routes were finalized. Targets were ranked by importance. Incendiary munitions were stockpiled. Aircrews trained for long night flights over unfamiliar terrain. Yet doubts grew within Allied leadership. Attacking the Soviet Union carried enormous risks. Retaliation was likely. Soviet forces could move south into Iran or Iraq, threatening British oil supplies there. The Middle East, already unstable, could erupt into a major battlefield, and politically the consequences were unpredictable. Still, some leaders believed the risk was justified. Germany had to be weakened at almost any cost. Then the war changed direction. On April 9, 1940, Germany invaded Denmark and Norway. The conflict expanded overnight. Allied attention shifted north. Resources were diverted. Aircraft assigned to Operation Pike were reassigned, but the plan itself was not cancelled. As late as early May 1940, Operation Pike remained an option. Everything ended on May 10, 1940. Germany launched its blitzkrieg against Western Europe. The Netherlands, Belgium, and France were overwhelmed with shocking speed. Allied armies collapsed, airfields fell, command structures disintegrated. By early June, France was on the brink of defeat. On June 22, 1940, France signed an armistice with Germany. Operation Pike was quietly abandoned. There was no announcement, no explanation. The bombers never flew. The oil fields never burned. The irony would reveal itself 1 year later. In June 1941, Germany invaded the Soviet Union. One of Hitler's primary strategic goals was the very same Caucasus oil region the Allies once planned to destroy. Baku became a central objective of the Eastern Front. Operation Pike vanished into classified files. After 1941, the Soviet Union became an ally. Lend-Lease aid flowed east, intelligence was shared, and the existence of a plan to bomb Soviet oil fields became deeply inconvenient. Documents were sealed, references were avoided, the story faded. Yet historians later uncovered the truth. They found detailed target lists, aerial photographs, fire spread calculations. Operation Pike was not a fantasy. It was a near-executable plan born from fear, urgency, and strategic desperation. What makes Operation Pike so unsettling is not just what it targeted, but when. This was early 1940, before the Eastern Front, before the full scale of Nazi crimes was known, before alliances hardened. The Allies were willing to risk igniting a neutral superpower's core infrastructure to starve Germany of fuel. World War II is remembered for its battles. But sometimes, its most revealing moments are found in the plans that were never carried out. The wars that almost began. And the fires that were prepared, but never lit.